Okay, hello and welcome to everyone. Today's our third webinar for the All Abilities program, the power of human connection. I'm going to start off with in the recognition of country, acknowledging the traditional custodians of the country through Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islanders and peoples today. So we have an exciting agenda today, which will look at different aspects of our activities within the facilities that you are delivering your services within. Not just that the physical aspects are important, but also the psychological, social and mental aspects of taking on the holistic individuals into your facilities. And so we've got Kathleen Mills, who's from Partner in Wellbeing, that's joining us today, and she'll be providing her expert opinions and knowledge to how this can assist your clients in recognising their attendance to your facilities and maximising their outputs and adherence to your programs. So Kathleen, as you can see on the screen there, has an experience as a mental health clinician and consultant. We've been lucky enough to have her part of our facilities, our staff, which has supported our staff, but also the business community, and she's also available for your consultation if you wish to reach out. And she has been providing face-to-face in Victoria some sessions on mental fitness, and also been part of many other well-attended and well-received webinars. So hopefully another exciting session for you guys today. So after this, or throughout, I should say, please don't hesitate to ask any questions in the chat box, or the Q&A box, I should say specifically. We will try to address them as they go. If not, we'll definitely try to catch up with them at the end. We do also have some exciting news at the end around some complementary resources that we're going to provide to your facilities. So stick around for that item, which Sonia will join the conversation later on. So moving forward, I will introduce Kathleen. Thank you for your time, Kathleen, and over to you.
Thank you, Chris. And as always, I'm always excited to be here talking about all things that are related to wellbeing and mental health. And as everyone is, I'm sure, in agreement, this is a very exciting program, and we're going to cover lots of different topics today. And I just want to say before we kick off that any of these topics aren't just for people that are in the All Abilities program. I think you'll all find something that you'll take away, definitely just for dealing with clients on an everyday basis, and about the importance of human connection. So if we go to the next slide. So what is human connection? So as you can see from the photos here, we seek out human connection, or connection, from the time that we're born through all stages of the lifespan, from when we're babies, before we have the ability to use language, and then right through to the end of our life. And human connection is incredibly important for development, communication, well-being, social skills, everything, learning. So I always say with human connection, it's you can really visualize it in a physical sense, and imagine that anyone that you're standing with or talking with, that you're exchanging your energy with them. And so human connection is the result of two people who feel seen and valued. So when someone feels like you see them and feels like you value them, then they're going to give you their energy back to you. And this is what we're going to talk about today, is that exchange of energy, that you can give this to people, but you're going to get something back as well. And with the deeper human connection, we can see trust and the exchange of that positive energy. And when trust builds, we get more out of each other. So the more that someone trusts you, the better the level of communication is. And then you'll get on this whole positive energy exchange. And that's when the real motivation starts and success really starts to build. Human connections can be uplifting, educational, and inspiring. So I say, as the fitness industry moves towards more being the health and fitness industry, in the health industry, you're considered to be, everybody is a helper. So you're there helping your client. So if we use that term helper, it's a really broad umbrella across everybody that's providing a service to somebody else. And when you are helping someone, you are going to get something back from them. So never think of it as being a one-way street, that you're there just giving to them. You are taking something back. You will learn from everybody that you create a human connection with. So they will be educational for you. It might inspire you to try and do different things, or to move into different sectors, or grow or learn more yourself. And human connections bridge gaps. They pave the way for valuable communication and create that framework for success. So without that human connection, success is really hard. It's an uphill battle. It's something that can, without communication, without those bridging those gaps, everything can seem like such a bigger task. So what do we gain from human connection? Well, we gain psychological safety. Psychological safety is where people feel secure to be themselves, to basically to grow. So the 4 steps of psychological safety are, as you can see here: inclusion, which is feeling included in a process or an environment; feeling safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge. So if you don't hit these steps, more specifically really in this order, what you're doing is you're creating that breakup of the exchange of energy. So it is to allow someone the space to feel safe to learn. They're not going to do that unless they feel included in the process. And they're definitely not going to put their hand up to challenge anything and say if something isn't right for them, or contribute anything if they don't feel like they're included and part of the process. So what we're going to do now is have a look at those 4 different stages and how you might apply them in this process, in this program. So when people feel included, they feel like they belong. They feel like they should be there. And if we look at the other side, on the exclusion side, they feel like they shouldn't be there or they don't belong. So you can imagine that you're trying to get somebody to participate, to learn, to connect with them. If they, from the outset, don't feel like they should be there, or that you want them there, or that they belong in that space, then the buck really stops there. So we start off with looking at, how do I make people feel like they belong here? And then, to be included, getting access to the same services, healthcare rights as everyone else in the community. So when they're excluded, they don't get those same rights, or they feel like they're not getting those same rights. So creating that space where people feel like they are going to have access to everything that's available to everybody else. And also allowing them to say, okay, well, this is what's available. And this is, being individual, this is how I might use this, or this is how it would look for me. So breaking it up into what suits the person. And much of what we'll talk about today is being person focused. So about looking at the individual as an individual and not as a stereotype. So treating people with respect. So that comes down to everything from that exchange of energy and the human connection, and saying, okay, I'm going to speak to you in a tone of voice that meets yours. So if you've got someone that comes into the space and they're high energy and they feed off that energy, creating that with them and working with them is going to be successful, or more likely to be successful, than if you've got someone that's really quiet and withdrawn, and you're there saying, okay, no, you need to be like me. You need to be full of energy and go, go, go. And whilst that might be motivating for some people, for other people, it makes them feel excluded. And also treating them as an individual and not a stereotype or statistic, as I touched on before. So it's very easy to look at someone and go, okay, I've dealt with this kind of client before, I've done this. This is the path that will go down. And basically snowballing everything into, it's going to start like this and then go this way, and this is what they're going to expect. When you stop treating people as an individual and treat them more as a stereotype, you're really doing yourself a disservice and them, because again, you're not exchanging that energy, and you're not going to be really hearing what it is that they're saying to you. People that are included are free to make their own choices. So giving people the option, and I think it's very easy when there's a carer that somebody might have a bit of trouble communicating, or they might be a bit shy, or something along those lines, and it's very easy to then try and create that human connection with, say, their carer or somebody that's there with them. And so you're making eye contact or addressing the person, the carer, not the actual individual that you're working with. So that then takes away their ability to speak up and to make choices and decisions for them. So making that eye contact, using that human connection in the sense of eye contact, body language, being open with the hands, expressing to them, I want to hear what it is that you have to say. And so they might deflect it off and say, you know, the person that's with me is better to tell you that, but at least you're giving them the option to do it, because then they feel like they're included in the process, because they can then use their own voice. They're not having everything decided for them, and they're not being told, you know, you have to follow a program. This is what we're here to do. It's A, B, and C. Second step is feeling safe to learn. So the start of that is feeling safe in their environment. And if you think about yourself, if you're ever in an environment where you don't feel safe, the last thing that you're going to want to do is edge out and try something new. What you're more focused on is trying to create safety where you are, not trying to move to the next step. So having someone feel safe, explaining to them what it is that's going to go on, a familiar face, someone greeting them when they come in, knowing where they need to go, so that it's relatively familiar and they know what to expect. They feel like they belong there. Then they're going to be happy to try something new. So when they don't feel happy to try something new, if you go the opposite way, someone feels unsafe, and then you say, okay, I want you to do this. This is something you've never done before. I want you to do it. You're less likely to do that because you're just not feeling like the whole environment is right for you. And why that is, it could be a human connection. It could be several different factors that are going on. But as somebody that's working with someone with a client, to stop and reflect on what it is that's making that person uncomfortable in the space, so that you can then make them feel safe, so that they will participate and be happy to learn. Because if they're not happy to try something new, then they're going to resist change. And as soon as they resist change, you're more likely to get a dropout. They won't stay as a participant in what it is that you're trying to get them to do, because they're just not happy and feeling comfortable with what's going on. So if we move on to the next stage, which is safe to contribute. So if you imagine somebody's safe in their environment, they feel like they're willing to learn something new, they're up for the changes for the most part. They go, okay, this is the step, the process we're going to go through. They're then going to answer questions. So if you say to them, tell me what's going on for you in this space, or is there something you'd like to change? All of those things, they're going to put their hand up and say yes. But going back to the previous step, or if they don't feel included, they don't feel safe to learn, they're not going to answer questions, or they might just give the answer that they think you want to hear, rather than the answer that is actually going to get the response that you need. And they will also ask questions without being prompted. They might find an opening, there's something that they want to know about, they'll put their hand up, or they'll stop you and say, I just need to ask this before we go on. So being safe to contribute is about creating a space where they will then learn more and participate more and have it ongoing, because they'll start to talk about the future. So they'll start to say, okay, what are we going to do next? Or where's the next step? Or if I master this, what's the next thing that might happen? Where could I go with this? So they'll start to talk about the future. So all of these things, if they're going on in a space, then you know that what you're creating is that psychological safety, where the person is going to participate, they're going to exchange that energy in the human connection, interact with you, and get what it is that they need out of it. And in turn, you're going to feel like, it's all going well. And the final step 3, is safe to challenge. So they'll speak up if something needs to change. So without being prompted. So if something's going, like you might think everything's going well, and then there's something that they're not happy with, if they feel safe to challenge, they will put their hand up and say, this isn't right for me. I need to do this. So I need to change this, or can you help me make a better decision in this space of, is there another option? And they might also make suggestions when prompted. Have you got any suggestions? Yes, they're more likely to put their hand up, say what it is that they think could change to make it better for them. And they will make changes without quitting. So when you go back to the start, you think, if someone doesn't feel included, they don't feel safe to learn, they don't feel safe to contribute, they don't feel safe to challenge, what are they going to do if they're unsafe in all those different factors? They're going to withdraw. and they're going to step back and back and back to the point where they're just not, they might just walk away, or they might just become more disengaged in the process. So recognizing that this could be going on for somebody and saying, okay, we were right up until this point and then things changed, you can then assess maybe where things might not have worked out for them. And in some instances, you might have to go right back to the start and say, do I need to start and make sure that they're feeling included, and that they're feeling like, you know, they're getting value out of this, and that I'm hearing them and they're being heard and communicating? Or is there something else going along in the process? Working out where they're sitting, so that if you've got someone that is challenging and they're not just doing it to be difficult, but they're making suggestions and they're having input, then you've created all of those steps to psychological safety. Now we're going to look at the cognitive model. So if anyone's ever had or heard of cognitive behavioural therapy, you might be familiar with this. And what it is it works on the premises. Cognitive behavioural therapy has been around for about, I don't know, we're up to about 50 years, 55 years. They've used it as a very common treatment for anxiety and depression. And what it does is it works on the premise that our thoughts affect our feelings and our feelings affect our actions. And then those actions will then affect our thoughts, and we can get into either a positive or a negative vicious cycle. If you have a look at the model over on the right, you'll see some of the negative thoughts that can go through people's minds as they become uncomfortable. And we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety in a bit and what that can look like. And it fits into this model, and you'll see that as we go along. So people that are in a new environment or a bit unsure, they might feel, I'm not good enough, I don't belong here, I can't do this. People will laugh at me. So then what do? They might withdraw, or they feel like that it's hopeless, they're helpless, it's never going to be any different. Or they might exhibit anger, and then they become aggressive. Or if they're doing loneliness, they might withdraw, they refuse to give feedback, they feel like it's just, you know, I'm scared of this, I don't want to contribute. And because they don't contribute and they don't feel like they're getting anything out of it, they're back at the top part again, feeling I don't belong here, this isn't for me. So, and it will just keep going in this vicious cycle. And what the model at the top there, they're called negative automatic thoughts. And generally we all have them in some way or another, where you're in a certain situation and you will think like me. I always say, I can't do maths. I did maths at a tertiary level. So the reality is that I can do some form of maths, but my negative thought, I can't do maths, I won't be able to do that. So then what do? You withdraw from things, and then I will say, I'm not going to participate in anything that's mathematical. And around you go again, see, can't do it. So if you're looking at somebody that comes to try out a new program and they're going, I don't belong here, they haven't got that sense of inclusion, I don't belong here, I can't do this, they withdraw, and then they refuse to give any feedback and they walk away. And then they're left in their mind going, I don't belong here. So the idea is understanding that if you help them to feel like that they belong there, then they're less likely to feel the negative emotions and more likely to feel that there's hope and that there's something to look forward to in the future. And then they're more likely to participate, and it breaks that cycle. And that's what cognitive behavioural therapy basically does, is it finds ways to break this cycle so that people don't get stuck in the negative automatic thoughts. And so let's look at anxiety, because it fits in. If you think about that model, this is where anxiety fits. So there's three general sort of types of anxiety. Often when people think of anxiety, they think of what we would call a panic disorder. So they're imagining somebody that's got that heightened level of tenseness, and they might not be able to breathe. They can't breathe. I think I'm dying. I'm having a heart attack. They can't see anything. They can't hear anything. They're claustrophobic. They might not be able to stop talking, or they just go like absolutely dead, like rooted to the spot sort of thing, and can't move. That's panic disorder. That's quite a high level type of anxiety that presents in people, and it is very debilitating. But there's also general and social anxiety. And if we look at the general anxiety, so this is about excessive worry or danger. So you might get somebody that comes into a new environment and they just go, oh, not only do I not belong here, I might hurt myself, I might, something might happen, people are going to look at me, it'll all go badly, and then they snowball. So they will start with a small thing. Oh, I'll walk in, this might happen, then that'll happen, then that'll happen, then that'll happen, then that'll happen. And all of a sudden they've got this giant, great problem that nothing's happened to them as yet, but they're projecting into the future. So they could be living from a past experience of something that's happened to them and projecting that might happen again in the future. And so rather than being in the present, in the here and now, they're either living in the past and into the future, but not in what's going on right here and now. So then the negative self-talk, and they start avoiding activities. And if you think about the previous slide where we're talking about how thoughts affect emotions, which affect actions, this is what happens here. I'm worried that I'm scared here. I don't feel like I belong. Oh no, I'm doing the negative self-talk. Oh no, I'm feeling this. This is, I don't belong. I'm scared. You know what I'll do? I'm going to run. So anxiety can look like that. It can also look like anger. And it's sometimes people have this giant, great outburst, and really what they're needing is some space to process their feelings, but they'll get into an environment where they go, oh, this is so uncomfortable. This is not me. I don't know what's going on. Anxious, anxious, anxious. I'll be angry. Because most people don't like to be around somebody that's angry. They don't like to sit in that big emotion. So they will avoid it and everyone will back off. And then in that cycle, they're going, okay, I've been left alone. See, I don't belong here. And it feeds into their negative automatic thoughts. And then they get the excuse basically, or the reason to withdraw from the activity. Social anxiety is very, very similar. So that's the fear of being negatively judged in social situations, especially in new situations that aren't common for somebody. So they might avoid eye contact and look away because they don't want to be noticed, or they don't want someone to really engage with them, because when they engage with them, then they're going to have conversation about themselves. And some people find it really difficult to talk about themselves and to reveal parts of themselves about what might be going on with them, because they feel like there's a fear of judgment there. And they're going to notice that I'm not perfect, or that I have all these flaws that I'm focused on, not realizing that those flaws are probably not going to be noticed by the person that they're talking to. But their social anxiety is feeding into that negative automatic thoughts. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody will know I'm struggling. I need to get away. And then when they get away, see, nobody even noticed I was gone. It's much better that I'm not there. And it goes into this cycle. So recognizing that anxiety doesn't always look like that high-level panic disorder. It can look like anger, frustration, aggression, sadness, inability to talk, not being able to say anything positive, withdrawing. Most people that have anxiety, or not most people, is probably not true, but a lot of people that have anxiety don't realize that they've got it. They don't realize that that's what's going on for them. But as somebody that's working with people that are new to an environment or a program, understanding what anxiety might look like for someone can help you to then take them out of that space to work on that human connection and get them back into that inclusion stage, so that then they're more likely to work through what goes on for them during anxiety. And a working alliance. So a working alliance is, I use the word as collaborating and collaborative here a lot, because it is a collaboration between the person that's participating and the person that is there to facilitate that participation. So it's a collaborative effort between the helper and the client, where both parties agree on the steps. So understanding that, communication is key, and saying, this might be what you've got in mind, as an exercise professional, this is what's going to happen. But that person might not understand all of those steps, because to us, to people that work with clients, you've gone through these steps so many times before, you know them like the back of your hand. These participants might never have done anything like this, and recognizing that they might not get that. And it's interesting. It's something that do a bit of, I suppose, self-disclosure to help understand that. I had another clinician come to me with a presentation on mental resilience, and she was saying to me, "What if this is boring to everybody?" And I said to her, "You need to remember, this is, I wouldn't say boring to us, but this is commonplace to us. This is what we talk about with clients all day, every day. But the people that receive this information, a lot of the times it's brand new to them. So it's like a revelation, it's something different. But that same learning, that new sort of situation they can find themselves in, for some people creates a lot of anxiety. So recognizing that whilst it's commonplace for you to go through these steps, that the client might not recognize that or see it that way because it's just really out of their normal scope of their day and their activities. So a good working alliance will include communication from both the helper and the client with open and honest feedback about the process. So it's pointless ticking all the boxes and rolling through something and saying, I've done all of this, gone from A to B, I've got everything done, but the client wasn't happy with it, and there could have been just some really minor changes that made them feel like everything was going better for them and more likely to go through the program and complete it. So creating that feedback loop, what worked for you, what didn't work for you today, is there something that you'd like to change? And again, that's going to happen if you create that psychological safety. Recognizing that not everyone is the same, and as an individual, the client needs to be able to make choices that best suit them and their needs without being held to a set of ideals. So again, just going through ticking the boxes isn't necessarily going to have success and bring about success. And finding the ways that you can get the client to communicate will help open up that working alliance. And with a great working alliance comes the most amount of success. So how do you do it? So get to know and understand your client. So when you first meet them, allow them the time to get to know you. If you come in and don't give them that space, then you're effectively a stranger. And that can be really confronting for some people. But getting them to talk about themselves, asking those general questions, knowing that you see them as a person, not just for their fitness needs and goals, and also that you see the person, not the problem. So seeing, as an entire person and as understanding them, that's again, you're back there exchanging that energy and exchanging the human connectedness, and they feel like they're part of the process. Practice active listening skills. So when a client tells you about their life, goals, or challenges they are facing, reflect back to the client so they know you've heard them. This is high-level empathy, and it's basically a head nod. So this is letting them know, I acknowledge you just through a simple, like through body language. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Because when people are heard, and they'll often move on to the next stage of whatever it needs to happen, if they feel like they're not heard, they might be stuck in that process where they're just going, I can't go any further than this. I'm stuck here until you hear me. We are not going any further. So allowing them that space to get that off their chest and to communicate that creates a great working alliance. Then ask the client why they joined the program and what they're hoping to gain from it. Ask them if there is anything specific. Now, this is obvious. I'm sure that you all do it with clients, but just pointing it out that to make sure that this is really part of that inclusion process, making them feel like they're part of this program, not just somebody that's turned up as a number. And understand that trust and communication will build over time. So the ability to accomplish that in the first session might not happen, but knowing that it can build at different rates with different clients in different environments. So each time you make a positive communication strategy, you're building trust and strengthening that working alliance. So if you look at it rather than saying, okay, I need to create this great working alliance, that's the end goal, and breaking it down into different parts and saying, this is how I'm going to do it in this moment, in this space. And it might take, for some people, to build trust, it might take as little as 3 or 4 different activities or exchanges of that energy. And for other people, it may wane, or, ebb and flow. It may also take a really long trail into building, and recognizing that everyone's going to be different and not feeling like a failure or feeling like it's not going well, but rather recognizing that perhaps there's just something with this particular client that you need to tweak or change, or recognize it's going to take a little bit longer. And being aware of when change might be needed. So if a client becomes disengaged or doesn't seem interested in the program, ask yourself if there's something you can change that might rectify that. So this is above and below the line thinking, basically. And what it says is that if you think that the person is the problem, then generally you're the problem. And that sounds quite confronting and saying blame sharing, but really what it's saying is that if they become disengaged, again, go back to those 4 steps of the working alliance and say, of the psychological safety, and say, well, where did they drop out? What happened there? Because we started off well, and then this happened and that happened, and just having a bit of a think about what's gone on with that particular client to work out why something changed, because that's probably where the disengagement happened. And if you can then re-engage them at that point and continue on, You might find that you've rectified all the problems, they continue to participate, you've got the great working alliance, and you're able to do that human connection. And understanding calm. So when someone's in a new environment, they're learning something new, they're looking at this feeling safe to learn and safe to contribute, the beginning of each session, helping them to feel, again, going back to the start and creating each time they walk through the door saying, okay, how am I going to make them feel, remind them that they are included here, that they belong here, that I want them here, and that they're going to get something out of it. So again, allowing that space for them to be heard, to ask questions, but also for them to know what's going on. So this is the plan I had in mind for today, saying to them, we will begin with a chat about what you enjoyed last time, and then we're going to do this, this, and this. So that, again, they feel like they understand they're in that. If they're experiencing a bit of anxiety about what might happen, they know the space they're in. You can remind them, this is what we did last time. This is what we're going to do today, so that they are across, they've got that understanding, and then they know they can basically go down the list and tick, well, okay, we've done this, now that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen. So they are more likely to continue to contribute because they know what's going on. And then before you start, taking some time to ask questions about what they took away from the last session. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? You're doing the feedback loop so that they know, and then as you continue to see them, they're going to know that you're going to hear them if something's not right. And then that just picks up the participation rate, because again, we are client focused. They're all about people focus, and we're focusing on them as an individual, and then they're more likely to want to participate. Saying to them, I really look forward to our sessions together. That's inclusion straight off. After our last session, I was thinking about how you seem to really enjoy certain activity, and I just want to get some feedback from you about how you felt while doing that. So what you're effectively saying is you're enjoying their time, your time with them. You're getting something out of it as much as you're giving to them. That makes people feel like they belong there. And when they've got that negative automatic thought, going, I don't belong here, they don't want me here, that straight away on a cognitive level makes them go, oh, they've looked forward to me, looking forward to seeing me again because they enjoyed the last session with me. Maybe that thought's not right. And they start to break that cycle. Saying your client's name, addressing them in person. Again, this is about addressing them. It's really important to me that you enjoyed our time together. Can you tell me something from our last session that you would like to do more of? So again, they're there contributing, and on that creating the working alliance, they will see that collaboration, that this isn't just about them ticking boxes and following down a program, that they have something that they can contribute to it as well. And they feel less like a number and more like an individual. Now I want to talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy. As when you get people that are in a state of struggle, or their life might be a bit tough for them, they will often come with stories that are quite difficult to hear. And as a counsellor, I hear it all the time. Obviously, people don't come to counselling and say to me, everything is wonderful in my life, I really don't know why I'm here. They will always come to me with something that they're struggling with. So understanding what the difference between empathy and sympathy is really important. So empathy is an attempt to understand how someone might be feeling without feeling those emotions themselves, whereas sympathy is feeling the same emotion as the other person. So if somebody comes and says to you, I've had this really difficult week, it's, this has happened to me, and they might relay a story. It's about saying, I can hear that you're frustrated. So it's putting yourself in their shoes and saying, I can see that you're frustrated, acknowledging how they feel, and also saying that you understand why they feel that way. So they're feeling heard. But on the other side, if you're saying, I'm feeling frustrated for you and alongside you, that's sympathy. And that can often keep people in a difficult spot. Whereas empathy, when you're doing something to help somebody, is really what they need, because it helps them be heard and then process what's going on and then move on to the next steps, which might be the rectifying or moving past those difficulties. So when you experience empathy, you recognize the feeling of the others. However, it doesn't alter your own current emotional state. So if somebody is frustrated, you can say, I see that you're frustrated, but you don't become frustrated along with them. If they're upset, they're crying, you can say, I see that you're really upset, but you don't become upset with them. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel what's going on for them and think, oh, but you're saying in that situation, I'd feel upset too. But you recognize it's not actually happening to you, it's happening to them. And that if you sit in that sadness or that really difficult emotion with them, then you're not actually able to assist them. So when you experience sympathy, you recognize the feelings of the other person, and then you begin feeling them as well. So if they're angry, you become angry too. So then you've got two angry people. Two angry people isn't necessarily going to bring about a great outcome. It's more likely to get you arrested than it is to help somebody. So understanding the difference between what empathy and sympathy looks like is really important when it comes to, you know, people that are dealing with struggles and they're going to come and tell you about them. Next slide. Thank you. So how do we express empathy? So again, we're back to the empathic head nod. So yeah, I hear you while you're listening. That is a really, really strong tool. And if you think about anyone you've ever spoken to that you felt like has heard you when you go and see a medical professional or somebody, you're telling a difficult story to a friend, when they do that, I hear you, I understand, I know, and without speaking a word, that head nod works. So it's you're hearing them. And then you paraphrase and repeat back to the client what you heard them say. So you can stand there and do this, and the person tells you this, you know, I'm in struggle, this is difficult for me, and you just go, right, and then on to the next topic you wanted to discuss. That's not empathy. Empathy is saying back to them, so let me get this right. You can, and also say that that clients and participants, they are the greatest expert on what's going on with them. They will tell you if you're wrong. So you can't, you don't have any need to be concerned that you might be misunderstanding them, because they will tell you, and they won't necessarily be angry about it. Actually, more often than not, they're not angry. It's because when you can paraphrase and feed something back to them, they go, oh, she was listening, or they were listening to that. So you might paraphrase back and say, let me get this right. Can I just, you know, tell me if I'm wrong here? You can start off with, tell me if I'm wrong here. But if I hear this correctly, this is what's been going on with you with this. And they might say, yes, that's it, exactly. I've been heard. I'm included. I've been heard. So then they're safe to contribute, safe to learn. Then you add a reflective response. And actually, when we get on to the next slide, I'll go through what a reflective response at an empathic level looks like. And then thank them for sharing this information. So you can say to them, that sounds like it was really difficult to share, but I'm glad that you did. So you're telling them that you recognize that this has been difficult for them, but again, you're doing that exchange of energy. So the more that you give to them in that respect, they will give more back to you, and then you are just setting yourself up for more and more success. So how to express empathy? So this is where, you know, sympathy would sound like, oh, that's terrible, you poor thing. That's sympathy. Empathy can be things like, that sounds like a real challenge. And you can say, that sounds like a real challenge. Tell me how you went about dealing with that. So they will give you more information. And all of that information you can use to understand how you need to interact with that client. I want to make sure I understand this. So you're indicating to them through the use of language that you're interested in what's going on, and you want to make sure that you're getting the information correctly from them. That must have been a frustrating experience for you, recognizing again, they're frustrated. I can see how that would have been hard to deal with. You see how that you're not saying, I would have hated that. You know, you're saying, you're basically saying, I can recognize that would have been hard for you. And you're placing them as the center role. I can see that you really had a rough time when that happened. I'm glad that you were able to share that with me. So again, you're showing that gratitude, and you're saying, thank you for sharing it, because that's human connection, and that's that exchange of energy. Thank you for sharing that with me again. It's a bit different from I'm glad. And that makes sense that you would feel that way. So a lot of the times normalizing people's concerns. So some people will come into an environment and think they're the only one that's ever felt that way, that nobody else has ever had, you know, experienced anxiety or been concerned about something. They're the first person that's ever felt that. To say a lot of people feel this way. This is a really normal reaction, and we'll work through that together. Helps people feel like, oh, okay, you know, maybe I'm not that strange. Maybe I do belong here. And thank you for helping me to understand as well. And now I talk about positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement for all the parents comes up quite often when what we tend to do with children is tell them everything they're doing wrong. Oh, I can't believe you did that. You broke that. You didn't do this. Stop hitting your brother, all of that stuff. But positive reinforcement is about an unprompted positive response to good behavior. So it's about noticing something and saying, you did a really great job there. So in using children as an example, it's just saying to your child, oh, you're playing really well on your own, or I saw that before you were sharing. That they then go, okay, that was attention because I've done something well, not because I've done something wrong. And so people that are concerned that they might do something wrong might not want attention drawn to that. If I'm struggling with this, or that hasn't gone well for me, highlighting that and putting a big spotlight on it can make people feel like they don't belong there. But saying, you know, that was great, I like how you did this. So they might have gone through 10 actions, 10 different things, and 8 of them went badly and 2 went really well. Talk about the 2 that went really well, so that's the main focal point before you start to address the things that perhaps didn't go so well. And thank you for giving it a go. I could see you were really trying. So somebody that might try something and it doesn't go well for them would just think, oh, I'm such a failure. Whereas you're going, I can see you gave that, a try, and that's all you can do. That's positive reinforcement. That's reinforcing that what was great about that was the effort, not necessarily the outcome. And I was watching you just before, I noticed how well so knowing that, you've picked up something even from across a room or in a group environment, they did something really well. And you could even say, you seem to really enjoy that, picking up on their positive responses and saying, that went well, this was great. And most of all, it's about seeing the person, not the problem. Seeing what it is. It's very easy to come at things and look at a list of issues and go, I need to deal with this, and this. But recognizing that there's actually a person involved in the whole process, and saying, okay, let's get to know the person. Let's connect with that person first. Here it is, what we're understanding what they're going through and understanding what they need actually makes the problems clearer to deal with. So seeing everybody person first, problem second, will definitely help create that wonderful working alliance. And that brings my slides to a conclusion. Any questions from anybody? I'm just looking, triangular relationship. Okay, tips in managing. I may potentially ask a question. Okay, this is a direct message from you. Okay, this is a direct message. That is a really interesting about triangular relationships. It depends on the context and what's going on. But like I said in the start, because you're looking at the person, you need to address the person. That is a hard one. That's almost one of
just for the crowd there. So obviously, a lot of the individuals that are exercise professionals that are providing this service will come across individuals who will have their carer that will come to the class and to provide that extra service. So you talked about a fair bit about collaboration that expands and can complicate the situation. It can make it easier as well. But do you have any, I suppose, tools or tips in your communication in bringing them into the circle to enhance the outcomes for the client?
Absolutely. So you can find, I've found, and look, it happens in family therapy as well. So I do a lot of family therapy, that someone will feel like they're the spokesperson. So you might find that you get a client attend, and this is about reading body language. So you might be asking a question and you ask it directly towards the client, and you find that the carer wants to be the one that controls the space and will say things. Often what I will do is I will actually address the client and give them the opportunity to answer things first, or double check, like their carer might intervene and say, no, I don't think that's right, because sometimes they'll come across with real protective factors that they're putting limitations on the person they're working with, going, oh, I don't think this is right, and it's coming out of their own fear. So you can address the client and ask them for feedback, and they might say, I don't know, but at least you've given them the chance to answer that. And again, reading body language. So sometimes when you're working with someone, and you better tell you've got a carer that's there going, no, this, but you're looking at the body language of the participant going, I don't think they agree with that. So say, and you can address that, be really upfront. And that's, again, that working alliance is saying, looking at them saying, I can see you're uncomfortable with that answer. Would you like to tell me why, or what would work for you? Being really direct, I find, is the best way, and recognizing that, or just asking questions, I think. But it can also be understanding what sort of participation the carer has in the whole process. So they might, and that will vary from situation to situation as well. So I think the more questions you ask, I always say there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's more questions that you ask, the more time you spend with people, the more observant you are, the more you create that exchange of energy and go through those 4 steps of psychological safety, the more you're going to understand, and the more you're going to know how to deal with those individual situations. But know that I suppose it's all right to make mistakes, but just try not to assume anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the tools that we do have in part of the UFIT education was a resource that we put together with Sport Inclusion Australia, Deaf Sport Australia, Blind Sport Australia as well, around communication tools and tips. And when we do circulate the slides to this group, which we will do, as well as the link to the presentation, if you're looking to recap on any of this, is that we'll include this resource to have it in your back pocket, because there are so many different forms of disability, and to stay on top of it is sometimes difficult. So having this 2-page document will be very helpful for best practice. If possible, can we have Jason chime in? Is he online there?
Yeah, Chris, hi, how are we? Hi, Sonia and Kathleen, everyone else. Kathleen, I do have a question in regards to that day. So one of the things I was looking at is, what about in group settings? So if you've got multiple participants with varying disabilities, and then you need to address one person, ideally you'd want to be able to do that, I suppose, not so the rest of the group can hear, but how would you do that? So let's say it's during the process of an actual session.
So again, depends on the circumstance. I suppose it's no different to me doing interactive workshops. When I stand in front of someone, I don't just pick one single focal point. I make eye contact with everybody in that group, so everybody knows that I'm there to facilitate what it is that we're doing, right? So they're all part of my group. So I think that sometimes you can just look at someone and say, is there something you wanted to ask? Is it? And then you can ask them, would you like to discuss it in the group forum, or do you need to talk to me aside? Is this something, if you can see someone's not coping well with a situation, setting everybody else up to do something so that you can exchange some energy, some positive energy with that individual, is the way that I would be tending to address it. Because sometimes it might just take them understanding that you're seeing them in the space to really quieten them down, or that they might be wanting to move out of the group for a moment to gather their thoughts, or whatever it is that's going on. So I would just tend to say it starts from the start, that you're making contact with every person in some way. Okay,
because I'm vision impaired, so I don't.
And that's a different story. So that's well, I assume that's touch. So yeah, so that's a different way, and because every group's going to be slightly different. Yeah. And if you've got, you might have people that are on, autism spectrum disorder that you can't make eye contact with. So it's going to be different depending on what's going on in the group environment. But I think finding the way that's going to work so that they all know that they're part of the group, and that even if it's just, if you're, you start off with communication, raise your hand. If you're vision impaired, if there's something that you need to ask, or you need my attention, raise your hand. I will see you, I will come to you. And then acknowledging if someone does, saying, I can see you with your hand up, I'm going to come to you in a moment when I finish this. So again, it's acknowledgement.
Sorry, Kathleen, I was meaning that I've actually got a vision impairment myself, so I can't read a lot of body language. So the body language isn't as
quite
good.
Difficult. Tone of voice.
Yeah, that's usually what I work with.
Yeah, tone of voice is very important. And again, it's verbal communication. So explaining that you can't see everyone, and that don't feel offended, or you need to use verbal cues, or what it is that works for you.
And I do find, like you mentioned, that sometimes the barriers are that the carer is the one stepping in, taking control, and the likes of that. So you do need to pull them aside, and I guess a way that's not rude or intrusive, and then scares everyone else off, or then might even have that support worker or carer or parent then say, oh, this exercise program is not for you, because it's actually the carer who didn't enjoy it, not the participant.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's a very good point. Sometimes you're doing that multiple relationships, you're managing multiple relationships. And it's common across, not just with carers, as I say, family therapy, it's exactly the same. You get somebody in the family that doesn't like the way something's going, and they will pull everybody out of the process, even though everybody else is contributing and gaining something from it. So it can, again, you're dealing with an individual sort of situation, and maybe it might be working one-on-one with that carer to help them understand, again, this is what we're going to do, A, B, and C. This is why we're going to do this. So giving them that information and saying understanding is calm. So perhaps they're just feeling like something might happen that's going to make the whole process uncomfortable, and saying, okay, well, maybe I'll work with you on that. If that goes down this path, what do you think would be a good outcome, or what could we do? What's a good intervention? So using, not saying to them, you're wrong, I'm right, you don't understand, we're going to push through. But again, saying, how about we create a collaborative effort there and work out what is going to work for everybody involved.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's my biggest issue. As a participant in programs, then I find sometimes the instructors, and going back to being included, is that they will, I guess, demonstrate exercises in a visual environment. But, so they might say, okay, let's swing our arms like this. Now, as a person with no vision or low vision, I can't see what this means. And that's where that whole inclusion factor, I feel, is lacking in that sense. Like, you don't feel included, you feel more excluded, because some participants are being able to see what's that like. And it's the same as with people who probably are hard of hearing, is they can't then hear the person saying, okay, now we're going to do this type of exercise, and they're trying to follow visually.
Absolutely, yeah. My father's deaf. So I've had this challenge most of my life with his deafness, and we go into environments, and despite the fact that we'll say, like even medical environments, my father is deaf, they don't have any clue of how to, he comes out of appointments and says, I don't know what happened. And I'm there, translating and keeping his attention and so on. So it is a challenge, and it is up, I suppose, everybody that's leading a group. It does, you become a bit like an octopus. You've only got one set of eyes, but you've got to be across everybody, realise what's going on in the space, and watch people's body language. I don't say that time and time again. Watch their body language, watch their facial expressions. Obviously, it doesn't work if you're vision impaired yourself, but if you have full vision and you're watching a group of people, watch facial expressions and watch body language, and see when people are withdrawing. And the more that you understand and have that working alliance, the more you will recognise when people are struggling.
And on that, Jason, I think what I've learned from some of the different businesses that are on board and have had similar, demographic, that potentially are working people who are vision impaired, they actually did a survey to them prior to them commencing the program to say, would you be happy to work in a group environment with other disabilities, or just with people of the same impairment? And a lot of those people with similar things chose that they preferred to work in an environment with people with similar disabilities, for them, for the purpose of the trainers and everything, understanding the communication tools for that specific group. So I guess, having that initial conversation and communication with the individual to see what they actually prefer as well, rather than going into and putting them into a group setting and then them not enjoying the environment.
Yeah, that's great. I've seen that again in experience, is where we've had walking groups, for instance, that have paired people who are fully able to those that have vision impairment, and then it just ended up in frustration, because the people who were fully able or didn't have a vision impairment wanted to walk faster, and then the people that had no and had limited vision or no sight were being held back because they couldn't get guided through the walking tracks. So it didn't actually work in that sense. Some people lost patience, and I think, well, what you just touched on then, it's quite ideal to have people with similar disability in one group, but then at the same time, there's those that want to feel that included. I think what you just hit then, great point there.
Yeah, and I'd just probably just add to that is obviously limitations in understanding their body language, but listening to as Kathleen referred to before, the tone of voice, the communications, it becomes a highly sensitive aspect, which no doubt you have a heightened skill in there, Jason. Excellent. Well, thank you for your input there. I'm going to throw over to Sonia to talk about the pre-evaluation surveys and little items.
Great. So yeah, I'll just quickly go over the program and where we're up to date. So all businesses have commenced their meet and greets, their inductions. Half of them have started the program last week, some are starting this week, and some are starting next week. So just a reminder, with all those pre-evaluation surveys, if they could either be scanned to myself, or they can be mailed to our address in Elstonwick, which I have provided you all with. Once you have completed those surveys and provided them back to me and added them onto the participant spreadsheet, we can then go to the next stage of that invoice, providing you with 50% of the payment. Onto the next point, we will be providing complimentary t-shirts to participants and staff at each facility. We will be able to personalize these and add specific branding. So if this is something your site is interested in, please let me know. We would love to get some group photos of each site so we can showcase this back to Sports Australia to show how fantastic all these groups are going. And just a reminder that our state awards are coming up in September. So there's a QR code there which will send you to the links for each state.
Excellent. And we'll also email that out because the logos may be just impeding upon that QR code there. So we'll put that in the link. Thank you, Sonia. Is there any other questions before we wrap up? No. Well, I'll conclude by saying thank you for your participation. There will be a CEC offering. We just put a thumbs up in the chat if you're after a CEC for your attendance, and also you can email us at info@ausactive.org.au and we'll respond to that. Next webinar is the last Wednesday in September, being the 28th. Thank you, Kathleen, for your input and tips and skills and knowledge and expertise in what you've presented today. Hopefully it's been highly valuable to the participants, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.